Okay, my name is Marcela Olivera. He was asking me some questions actually. I worked before. I work in water issues right now. But before I was involved on before the water war. My life is after and before after. And before the water war, I was doing a lot of work with trying to research what was going on with the labor movement, because the policies, the adjustment policies in Bolivia started in the 80s. So we were trying to see what happened with all that organizing, labor movement that suddenly disappeared after the policies from the World Bank came. So we were trying to visualize the new labor world, seeing that workers were precarious and, they were young, many women were starting to work and works that were traditionally for men. And it was not because we were trying to, women were conquering those jobs, but it was more because we had the need to do that. So I was working on that, doing research, and then happened the water war, and I got involved in that because first my brother was involved as a labor leader. He was involved in the struggle, so because my brother was involved, I sort of jumped in, and then I stayed in that because I was the only one that sort of speak crappy English, and there were a lot of attention from outside trying to know what was going on with Cochabamba. So I was the only one that could answer those emails in English. So I had to stay there, and I worked as a volunteer for 4 years, and I was very glad I had a very supportive husband at that time. That for 4 years.
At that time.
At that time, not anymore.
That always says we've all been there, right?
So he supported me for 4 years while I was just, organizing and trying to help the new water movement that was emerging here. And after that, it's when I started to really work more from a professional point of view on water, because I felt like it was very important what was going on, with water, not just in Bolivia, but in the whole world. And so I got involved in water issues since then, and I've been working with an Inter-American Water Rights Network that goes from Canada to Argentina. It's called Red Vita. And it's a network of NGOs, unions, water systems, communitarian water systems, all sorts of people.
FinTap in Peru is part of that.
FinTap, exactly.
That's been our partner for years in Peru, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, FinTap is part of that. The Council of Canadians in Canada is part of that. Food and Water Watch in the United States is part of that. And we have the workers in Uruguay, for example, also that are part of this. And we're going to have an assembly in Mexico in a few weeks. We all are going to get together and try to talk about what's going on.
That's this year?
Yes.
Excellent.
So that's a little bit of what I do. So let me tell you a little bit about Cochabamba.
Excellent.
So I don't know how much do you know, but Cochabamba has serious problems with water, and I think that affects, and water crosses so many other things that are happening politically in this country. Everything is related to water. If you see what's going on with the mines, for example, you'll see that water crosses that. No, I don't worry, pero no, ¿quién pidió este tiempo? That's good. What?
Is that yours? I think between the two of us, I think. I hope.
Well, I think we ordered that one.
We ordered tahini.
Yeah.
Okay. ¿Qué ordenó? Why? Okay. ¿Y dos más vasos?
How many glasses do you want there, Champ?
I don't know where these guys are going.
Alright, well,
Do we have enough?
different size bottles, but beer's going to come out of all of them is the important thing. So,
Laura, could you pass me that glass?
this one.
Thank you. Okay, so
So
seems like water crosses everything and beer.
there's no beer without water.
Exactly.
Essential. You're about to explain
With the miners.
Water, yeah, mines.
Yeah, well, if you see water here and you see water everywhere, it crosses many other, crosses economic questions, it crosses political issues. So in Cochabamba, water has been a main issue, and people organize themselves around water. So we're gonna visit, for example, on Friday, a couple of neighborhoods in the south of the city, and if you see them, you'll see that their lives are around the water system that they have or that they do not have. In some cases, you'll see that you see there are neighborhoods that do not have water at all. They don't have around 45% of the population of the city is not connected to the main water system.
45?
So, yeah, around that. Some people say it's more than that, probably 50, and some people talk about 60%. So you'll see that a lot of the life of because people cannot live without water, so people have organized themselves around water. So, and the main organizations are in the south of the city, that's where there's no water at all. So in some cases they have created their own wells, they have dig, but the water is not good. Sometimes it's very salty, so they have to buy the water from water trucks. And the water that they get from the water trucks is not necessarily good either. You don't know which kind of water they're having. So anyway, so people who have migrated from the countryside have started to live in these areas outside of the city that are very poor, and so they sort of have brought the community into the city. So the same organization that existed in their communities now exists here. So they are very well organized around water, and it's not just about water, because if there are any other problem in the neighborhood, it's in the water committee where they get together to talk about these problems. So
how is the water delivered?
Well, and
Tankers or?
some of them have water tanks, water trucks, what we call, and others have their own wells. We're gonna go on Friday. We're gonna go and visit one neighborhood that is the best water system that there is. They have been very creative, bringing the water to them, because they have bought a piece of land that is behind the hill where they live, and they have created like a pump that is in fact a car. They have an engine and everything, so with the engine they pump the water from behind the hill, and for gravity the water goes to the whole neighborhood. And they have done that with some funding from the World Bank, and the World Bank has came and put the money and left, and we wish the World Bank would do that more often.
It's only fair that we should go see the one place in the world they did that.
So it's funny because sometimes we wish the bank will be just the bank, and not putting conditions or anything. Yeah. So anyway, that's the best water system. We're gonna go there on Friday, and we're gonna see also another water system that is called San Miguel, and they have their own challenges and everything with water, but still, interesting to see what's going on. And tomorrow we're gonna talk with Oscar Olivera, who's my brother, and he was one of, during the water war there were four spokespersons, and he was one of them. So he will give you a little bit of background of where we are with water after the water war, and he's very good connecting that with the state of where Bolivia is right now. Because we believe that the water war in April 2000 was the door that opened to all the changes that we have right now. Because Evo Morales was part of the movement, he was on the street with us, and the water war was the first victory in like almost 20 years of struggle against neoliberalism. So that was one victory that allowed people to keep reclaiming other rights, not just water, but also gas, for example. And we had another gas war in 2004, 2003, and this time we didn't kick just the corporation, but we kicked a president of Bolivia that had to fly to Washington, escaping because people were very upset. So all these small victories that people start to win since April 2000 have opened the door for people to feel confident and reclaim other rights.
And is the support for Morales generally still strong in Cochabamba?
I will say that the main, in the fields, in the countryside, because he comes from Cochabamba, and he's a migrant, like many people from Cochabamba. Cochabamba is a place of migrants. So he was a migrant from Oruro, and his main force or strength is in the tropical with the cocaleros. Yeah, he was originally from Oruro, but he immigrated here, like many people. Like all the people from the water committees, he immigrated here, and he became a cocalero. That is an area in Chapare, that is the tropical region here, and so that's where he started to organize the cocaleros and.
Cocaleros is Coca Farmers?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So he still has a lot of support there. But I don't think he has too much support right now in the cities and with the middle class, because we don't feel included in this government. I don't feel included. I am not an indigenous person. I am a mestiza, and I'm a middle class person. But I don't feel like when he talks about the indigenous people, I don't feel included on the speech. I feel like I'm a Bolivian too, but I'm not necessarily an indigenous person. So how do I fit in the speech that he has? So he tends to talk a lot about the indigenous and has an indigenous speech, but I don't see he's including other sectors from Bolivia on that speech.
And what are politics like in the city of Cochabamba then? What is the political life of the city of Cochabamba?
Well,
is it contentious, or is it fairly calm, or have you noticed progress, or?
I feel like, for a long time we have felt like dismobilized. I don't think people are mobilized like before here, and I feel that's in part because Morales is in power. I feel like when he took power, we all sort of, people sort of felt like that was it. We have
the
now
same problem with Obama.
Exactly, exactly the same happened here. Where's the enemy? We don't have an enemy. He's our friend. He's now in power, and he's gonna do well. So for a long time, I think we all felt like not sure about what was going on, And I feel like in the last year, people are starting to react. And there was a huge and a strong reaction when he tried to increase the prices of gasoline, for example, like a little bit more than a year ago. And all the people mobilized and went into the streets, exactly like when a neoliberal government. And so I feel like people are starting to wake up, thinking that it's not who is in power, or it's not who is in power that's going to change things, but we are going to change things. And we're going to change things if we are mobilized on the streets. If you're not mobilized, nothing will happen. So it's not about delegation of power, but it's more like we are the power. So we have to, we have to be pushing, because otherwise that's not gonna, nothing will come from the top. So we have to do it from below. I think that's a little bit, what's going on.
What accounts for the fact that social movements have such a prominent role in Bolivian society? I mean, that's not true in so many countries. I mean, what's in the water here?
I feel like, I actually wondered the same. When I was living in Washington for a year, I remember that there was one day when the prices of the subway increased. It was like 20 cents or something like that. But when that happened in Washington, nobody did anything. And I was like, if this will happen in my country, people will be on the streets next day. And
happens in Ottawa all the time. Nothing happens. Just keeps going up.
So I feel like it's a question of culture. That's the way that we are. We have learned that the only way to change things is being on the streets. And I feel like in Washington, there's another way, and it's lobbying in the Congress,
Well, it's actually even more pathetic. The situation you're talking about, a guy got in touch with us who set up a website about the increase. And 4,000 people signed up on his website. They were upset about the increase. So he really felt, he got in touch with us to see, well, what would I do with these 4,000 people that signed up? And we're sitting, this was before the area of slacktivism and Facebook campaigns and all that. The campaigns on the face is what we heard they're called in Bolivia. I love that. But that became the thing, is what to do, as if those 4,000 names were a resource, even though there was no way to engage them to take action. And we never could communicate successfully with that guy. And there was one rate increase after another that followed that, in different cities, and just no one wanted to move. It was just really surprising.
Being in the United States, what I've noticed is that there are actually a lot of things happening there. There are a lot of cooperatives and little initiatives in the neighborhoods that are not necessarily in the mainstream media. And because they are not in the mainstream media, we tend to believe that they do not exist or that they are not important, which I think it's false. I feel like when people are getting together and are starting to create a solution for their community, you're creating a solution for, you're doing something there that it's meaningful and it's very important. And, at the end, it's not about, yes, it's about big mobilizations and being on the streets, but in the daily life, how do you resolve your problems?
Right.
And it's, in the water communities, they are resolving their problems in their communities. So what are we doing in our neighborhoods? Are we organizing our neighborhoods? Do we know who lives next to us? So sometimes we see these big things and we don't see the small things that are also important.
Absolutely.
Why do you think, since you spent time in the U.S. and here, is it easier for U.S. politicians to ignore mass mobilizations than it is here? Like, to me, it seems like the practice of massive mobilization is something that Bolivian politicians have to respond to. And in the U.S., the politicians, whatever, they do their thing and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to ignore that one. Why do you think that is?
I feel it's because there are no real mechanisms that last long. Also, what happened with Wall Street? You Occupy Wall Street, for example. For me, it was amazing. Like people were mobilizing and were trying to do things there, but they weren't really ways to. United States is so big also, it's not Bolivia or Uruguay, it's big. So how do you get together with people and start to, I don't know, you probably know better answers than me.
I was interested in your perspective as someone who sees this from the outside.
But I just feel like the changes are not gonna, real changes, the ones that we want, are not gonna come through politicians. They're gonna come from things that we do locally.
That's right.
Because if we keep putting energy on politicians and trying to, to make changes from there, it's all gonna, it's not gonna be permanent. We're tired to lobby with our government, so we said enough of that. We're gonna do things in our own way and with our own resources. And for example, we're promoting something that we call public-public partnerships. That it's
public partnerships.
Public-private partnerships.
Public-private or public-public?
Public-public.
Public-public.
Because the World Bank said public-private partnerships, so we said no, we're going to do public-public partnerships.
Oh, okay.
So we're doing help, like two water committees get together and they help each other. With technical staff or administrative staff. So, and there's no money in the middle. It's all based on knowledge, exchanging of knowledge, and on practices. So I think we have to start to oppose things and then start to think on alternatives and what do we do at community level. I think that's the key right now for me.
This is a whole different subject, but we kept hearing on La Paz that all the NGOs are down in Cochabamba.
Well, they what?
All the NGOs are in Cochabamba. And normally that's a terrible thing. Is that true though? Are there a lot of NGOs down here?
There are a lot of NGOs. There are. But I don't see necessarily the NGOs as, I don't see NGOs as bad, necessarily. I think if they are there to accompany and to help with the work, and if social movements define the political lines, I think it's good. But if the NGOs are going to tell you what to do, then, we have a problem there.
And have you found some NGOs that don't tell local groups what to do? Who? Well, you're not really an NGO. Most of these NGOs are government-based, government-funded operations.
I feel like there are some NGOs that are doing well, and
which ones are those?
Well, you're gonna talk with Oscar tomorrow. He works with an NGO. Well, it's a foundation, but they do a lot of work with labor unions, trying to organize precarious workers. And they also do work with the water systems. And I feel like there's no, in the case of NGOs, it's not, we don't have to think like an abusive relationship. It's not the poor social movements that are being abused by the NGOs. If the social movements do not say, well, you're coming here and these are our conditions, I think it's, I think it's important that the social movements also can say you're not gonna, they have to be strong and define the rules of the game. So I don't feel like.
No, I understand the theory.
Yeah.
And what about this? Go ahead.
And maybe this is a stupid question, but why is water so important in Cochabamba in particular? Because we just came from La Paz and it's, desert, bone dry. So it's like, and then I come down here, it's like palm trees and green. So it's like,
Well, it's
visually
because
it doesn't.
it's because you're here. This is the middle of the city, and and this is like Cochabamba is a little bit like the world. So there's a north, where there's rich people, and we live well, but there's a south of the city, and in the south of the city live poor people, migrants, and you're gonna go there Friday. You're gonna see it's very dry, it's dusty. Get ready for that because the dust, makes you hurt sometimes your nose, and it's different from here.
One thing that I couldn't help but notice just a second ago is people walking around with hoses just watering all these little patches. Has there been any movement to kind of question that and how that water is being sort of spent just for beautification rather than
No, there hasn't been any. There hasn't been any policy at that level, and I feel like a lot of that comes from ignorance. People do not know how the people in the south live.
right?
And it's very hard to tell people here also what's happening there. And it's such a different behavior from the people in the south. And people here in this middle of the city are not organized at all.
What did you just say? People of the city are not organized?
Are not organized.
Interesting, okay.
There are organizations that should be, neighbor associations that should be working here, but there are no at all interest in participating on that.
Oh.
And that also happens a little bit in the north of the city where rich people live. So here's more middle class, and people that do not have actually the services are the ones that are organized around that. Yeah.
And how was the decision made that they just weren't going to provide water to the south part of the city? Was it an economic decision by the city government, or is it out of the jurisdiction of Cochabamba? Or?
No, what happened is that the city grew up too fast. And the city started to grow because there were the neoliberal policies in the 80s, and all the mines were shut down. So all the people from the mines